It's been about 7, 8, maybe 9 months since I showed you how to wire. And unfortunately, I was so busy that I didn't get around to showing you how to do the wire removal. But I'm going to show you that today. It's a good example of what not to do. Don't let it get too far along where it starts to bite into the trunk. This is a good example of what not to do, to let it bite into the trunk like that. You see how the tree have grown around the wire and starting to do some damage. There's probably not much chance of being able to undo it without cutting the wires off. Okay, for this, it's best to use the Japanese wire cutters, specially made for bonsai. Now, when you're putting it on and just cutting the wire, you could use just about any wire cutter, but you notice that there's a blunt tip. You can see that there's a blunt tip. So it makes it easier to take the wire off without doing damage. That's the main advantage of a bonsai wire cutter. Now what I have to do is start from the top, so it's the opposite of what we did. We started wiring from the bottom and it ended at the top. So now what you do is to start cutting the wire at every turn, then it falls off. It's very precise work, because if you go too deep, you end up cutting the tree itself. So carefully, at every turn, cut off. This is aluminum wire, and aluminum wire tend to be a little easier to remove even if you don't always cut. But if you have copper, make sure that you don't even try to undo that, because they get very stiff and the chance of saving. So let's pretend this is the branch and this is the top. What I'm doing is cutting at every turn. See, everything comes off like that. So that's the technique that I'm using. I'm really into some nasty work now. See how, if you're not careful, you end up biting too much into the tree and more damage. But that's why you got to be very careful what you do. Frankly, the wiring part's easy. It's this part, especially once it's been neglected, that's very difficult. Here's a thinner wire that I can unravel. This is what I should have done, was at this stage, if I see how I could just undo this part here. So timing is critical in terms of wire removal. You should be checking this and checking it. Make sure that you don't get to this stage of damage. So once again, here's another one. Really have dug in. The other thing too is, it seems like the wire because it picks up heat, it makes that area grow faster, which makes the damage even more intense. Let's take a real close look at the damage that it has done. Now, this will not kill it, but it's very unsightly. And as we pan back, this part ended up fatter than down here. It's a reverse taper. So if you must wire, you're going to have to be very careful about removal.